Hello. First of all, thank you so much for being willing to sit down with me today. My name's Mia. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Reflector, which is the student newspaper at the University of Indianapolis, right over there on the south side. And so I am writing a story for college-age voters to kind of hopefully inform them well enough so that when they get to the ballot, they kind of know what's going on, especially, not just on a national level, but on the local level as well. So for my first question, I would like to ask, why sit down one-on-one with a student journalist?
Because it's incredibly important that we inform Hoosiers and that they go and inform others. And there's so much at stake this year from the federal level, from the state level, even the local level, that there is no opportunity here and no room for anyone to sit this out. But I know it's a matter of getting to that voter and doing everything we can through social media, through TV, through any interviews we can get to make sure people are informed.
Yeah, and so according to your campaign website, on your list of plans, you precede all of them with this phrase common sense. So just out of curiosity, why common sense?
Because we've been without common sense for too long. So when I was at the State House, I served as the last elected state superintendent of public instruction. And when I was there for 4 years, it was a 4-year term, I saw a lot of things that were being done with the absence or the lack of common sense. And so for me, Indiana prides itself on we have strong Hoosier values. And one of those is we are common sense oriented and we just get things done. But we use a lot of what makes sense and what's practical and what's reliable in order to do that. So that's common sense, and it just makes sense that we're trying to bring that back to the State House.
Yeah, and so a 2022 study from the Indiana Chamber of Commerce found that nearly 40% of Indiana college graduates will move out of state within the first year of graduation. After graduation, over half of those will leave within 5 years. And so how can Indiana keep and attract younger generations?
Right now, young people, that's our biggest export. It really is, because we call it brain drain, we call it a lot of different things, and the goal is to make sure that we have very talented individuals and we hang on to all of them, but we talk about it, but we're not doing anything in order to make that happen. So a lot of it is making sure we're being diligent in creating jobs that are good paying jobs, you have affordable housing, that your healthcare costs, you have access to healthcare, but you also have costs that you can manage. It's such a bigger piece of the puzzle than just saying, hey, we're business friendly and assuming everybody's going to want to stay here. Part of it too, what I hear from young people is they like diversity. They like inclusion. They like people to get along. They don't like petty infighting. That's just not who young people are for the most part. And so making sure that we are creating a state environment in which people want to live here, thrive here, play here, be educated here, and work here is incredibly important. But that takes work. And that takes leaders who understand that, a lot of that is our rhetoric, but it's also our actions.
Yeah, and so as you probably know, Indiana hasn't had a Democratic governor in 2 decades.
Yeah.
So how are you going to make a splash in a state house that has a red supermajority?
And we've never had a female governor.
Yeah.
So we're one of the few that's never had a female governor. We haven't had a Democratic governor for 20 years. And so it's time. And making sure that we're doing our due diligence in the responsibility that comes with that. And I'm well aware of that. I was the first female principal in my elementary school. I was one of the few female principal or superintendents in my district. And so I get what that means. I was only 3 of 44 female state superintendents of public instruction. So with that comes a responsibility and to make sure that I'm representing women well. And so I take that very, very seriously. But that 20 years has also been an absence of a lot of people's voices. So making sure that we're being diligent in working across the aisle, being very open about bipartisanship, which I have been. That's why we have so many Republicans supporting us and independents, because they like how we're staying true to the issues that really matter to Hoosiers, but also making sure that we're expressing our interest to work with all, not just small pockets of people. And we've done that during a campaign, and we'll stay true to that once we get elected.
Yeah, and so speaking of partisanship, in 2016 you ran and won your superintendent election, running as a Republican and on a Republican platform. And so now you run as a Democrat and advocate, for common issues on the Democratic platform, pro-choice reproductive rights and legalization of cannabis, for example. So what changed?
It's not about party, it's about people. And when I was elected in 2016, the Republican Party was very different. And my values didn't change, the party changed. My values have always been about people. And I told kids for 20 years as an educator that character mattered and that we should take care of each other and we're stronger together and we should embrace diversity and inclusivity and we're better when we're educated, we're better when we're healthy. And what I saw at the State House was a party who simply did not get aligned with that. And so for me, it was about my values didn't change, but the party that's not what was embracing the party right now. And so I switched parties, stay true to my values of we got to take care of each other, we got to take care of people, we're better when we're stronger. And so I stayed true to that and switched parties.
So for you, what was the moment where you kind of realized that?
Yeah, there were a lot. I mean, to be honest. So, but when I was even campaigning, I had some incidents where I was like, wow. I mean, I'd be at dinners and different things would happen and I'd be like, oof, I didn't like where that landed and I didn't like that they were continually bashing other states and other people. And I'm thinking, this is not what I'm about. And during campaigning, I took my son, who was at the time in high school, and he went with me and he listened to the whole spiel and listened to the same thing I was listening to. And we walked out to the parking lot and he said, Mom, you're not like this at all. And so that was one of the first, it wasn't like it was a secret that things were going south, but I was like, oh. And then once I got into office, there were just a lot of conversations that were unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And I just didn't agree with it. And so several things happened. And, when you're focused more on political power and political money, that was just not who I was. I'm a middle class person. I had always worked since I was in high school. I have a family that I'm proud of. I have neighbors that I want to care about. It wasn't about getting powerful and getting money. It was about taking care of each other. And so because of that, I switched parties. But there were a lot of those little pieces along the way that I was like, didn't feel good. So I switched parties.
Yeah, so kind of shifting to your history and education, how do you think your background in education correlates with the office of governor?
Yeah, well, we're over half of the state budget, so we're expensive, but we're an investment. So I was in charge of over $9 billion, and so I took that very seriously. I'm very fiscally conservative, and I know people work really hard, and we don't want to waste our money. But education being a huge part of what we do in the state, not just K-12, but post-high school. We need a lot of work up front in that child care and that universal pre-K space, but it's an investment. That's our economic development's based upon that. Our safety and security is based upon education. How we get along with each other is our educational level. There's so much at risk. Democracy is about education. So that educational piece is huge, and there's no one who's better equipped and suited for that than an educator. And so I look forward to bringing my skills and my passion to that office. Our kids deserve it, and also our economy is dependent upon it.
Yeah, and so in 2022, Indiana experienced, more specifically Greenwood, a mass shooting inside Greenwood Park Mall. Gun violence overall is on the rise and is becoming a large concern, not just for Hoosiers, but I'd wager a lot of citizens across the nation. How can the governor effectively help to reduce gun violence and work with the state legislature to pass bipartisan gun legislation?
Yeah, gun violence is a huge issue. Community safety, school safety, workplace safety, educational safety. It's all part of who we are, and sometimes we take it for granted. But I was, I am the only candidate who's gone through school safety training, and that is a huge piece of this. But also violence just in our neighborhoods. So we have to have a governor who will be a good partner with our local level officials. We also have to celebrate our first responders because we are so dependent on them. We're having trouble finding them and paying for them, which is a huge concern to everybody. But I'll tell you what doesn't help is like when you're sitting in the governor's office, and I was a state superintendent, we had 2 shootings in our schools, and unfortunately one resulted in a death. But the response was, we got to get wands into all these schools. And I tried to tell them that's not the answer, because you can have wands. If you find something, what are we going to do? We have no law enforcement to help us because we can't afford it. What are we going to do when you have long lines and it's not practical to get school started? That is not the answer, to have a wand and wand everybody down, because we don't have the manpower to do anything with that. We have to have mental health. We have to have common sense gun violence prevention laws, which are so welcomed by 80% of Hoosiers. We have to have some common sense approaches to community safety, and that means partnering at the local level, trying to pass those common sense gun violence prevention. Why are we my opponent's trying to roll back red flag laws? And red flag laws are simply when someone's in crisis, you have the ability to go take their weapons so they don't hurt themselves or hurt someone else. And my opponent's like, leave people alone. And I'm like, no, we need to educate people on how to use those wisely. And that's not forever. I mean, eventually if they're safe, they're going to get their weapons back. It's not about coming to take weapons. It's about protecting people, including those individuals from themselves. But there are a lot of common sense gun prevention, like age, reversal of permitless carry, which the state police would welcome, making sure we educate people on red flag laws, taking weapons of war and try to prevent them from getting on the streets. I mean, we're not asking extreme. I own a gun. I understand the Second Amendment. This is not what that's about. It's about common sense. It's about protecting all Hoosiers.
Yeah, and so as part of your 2016 campaign, you pointed out an aura of divisiveness kind of plaguing your community. Now the Pew Research Center reports that there continues to be wide gaps in cultural issues among American voters. So how will you maintain bipartisan support or unity in an increasingly partisan political environment?
It goes back to messaging. It goes back to the willingness to do that. People at the State House, what I learned is they say they want to work with each other and work across the aisle, and I did not see a whole lot of that happening at the State House. And so be an example of that and finding those folks that we can find some common ground and showing them it can be done and being an example of that, not just at the local level, but also at the federal level, because there are a lot of Republicans at the federal level that have good ideas. Why aren't we not using some of those in Indiana as a Democrat? But also, too, why are we not using a lot of the great ideas Democrats put forth and we haven't used in 20 years? And so finding that common ground, but being an example of that, being top of the ticket and the leader of the executive branch, we need to have someone who will show that this can be done in Indiana, because we deserve that as Hoosiers. We deserve, if there's an answer to a problem, let's find a solution. Who cares who puts it forth? Who cares the political party? We need the solution so we all are in a state that's better.
Yeah, and what is your favorite part of Indiana?
Yeah, I love Indiana. I love a lot of things about Indiana. I love to play in Indiana at our state parks. I've been educated in Indiana at some of our great universities. I love that we have great K-12 schools. I am proud that we have some of the best physicians in the United States. We need to hang on to them, but I'm proud of a lot of things. I'm a fifth-generation farm family. I'm proud of the agricultural tradition that's here. I'm proud of a lot of things that Indiana has done, but we also have some things we need to work on.
Yeah, and so I like to end all my interviews this way. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned or asked you that you think would add value to?
I just encourage people to vote. We're 50 out of 50th in voter turnout, and people who are even registered don't go vote. So that registration process in Indiana is over for this go around, but it's not over forever. So get registered, even if you can't vote this go around. But if you are registered, go vote. Go vote early. Make a plan to vote. Get it out of the way, because what happens is the day of, it rains, or work goes late, or you can't get out of class, or you have to study for something big, or a family calls and your responsibilities get pulled. And so go vote early, but also pressure your family and friends to do that. There is a lot on the line. We like our freedoms. A lot of women like I wanted to family plan on my own terms. I want other women to have that option. I want men who also want to have a say in that to have family planning options. We like our freedoms. Let's make sure we're exercising our right to vote so that we can get them back and we can keep the ones we have.
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much for carving time out of
I'm
sure it's a busy schedule.
You.
So
well done.
Yeah,
well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you. Proud of you.